It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood from coast to coast and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me is psychologist and happiness expert Shawn Achor, the New York Times bestselling author of The Happiness Advantage and Before Happiness. He has been interviewed by Oprah, had a PBS special, and his TED Talk is one of the most popular with more than 12 million views. Welcome, Shawn. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Shawn, most of us believe, and we've been taught, that if we work harder, we will be more successful and then we'll be happy. But recent discoveries in the field of positive psychology have shown that this belief is actually backward and that happiness fuels success, not the other way around. So explain for all of us what this means. Why is this flawed thinking?
It's fascinating because I spent my whole life thinking, if I just work harder, I'll be more successful and then I'll feel happier. And, I found myself at Harvard and spent 12 years there. And the last 8 of it, I was a graduate student living in the dorms, helping counsel these freshman students as they first got into school. And what I started to realize was that there was a pattern that about 3 weeks in, no matter how happy they used to be getting into a school that they wanted to go to, 3 weeks into the school, their brains started focusing on all the workload or the stresses or the hassles or complaints. And when we started researching it in the psychology department there, what we realized was that every time you actually have a success at school or at work or at athletics, turns out every time you have that success, your brain changes the goalpost of what success now looks like. So you hit a sales target, we raise a sales target, or you get into the right school, now you need to get into a better school or get a better job. And it turns out that success never led to the happiness we thought it was going to. I've now worked with professional athletes and with celebrities and all these people who have incredible wealth and successes, and yet it doesn't automatically make them happier. But what we found was that if you flipped around the formula, if you could get somebody to become happier in the present, to get them to become more positive, to find more meaning in their life, it turns out then every single success rate rises. Every business and educational outcome improves when the human brain is positive. So it turns out we've been living life backwards, that if we could actually create happiness now, our success rates would rise. But if we waited for success, happiness never came.
How then can we retrain our brain to fix this broken process?
Yeah, it's amazing how much we do it. I mean, after people listen to this, you're going to hear it all day long. It's like, well, as soon as I get to the weekend, then I'll feel happier. As soon as I, get this job, I'll feel happier, lose 10 pounds. And what we found is we literally have to retrain our brains to scan the world, not for the problems, which our brain naturally does. We need to scan the world for the things that actually lead us to greater levels of happiness. Because it turns out when your brain becomes positive, you're better at losing weight, you're better at finding a good job, you're better at getting into the right school. So some of the things we found are surprisingly simple. I thought, and if we were sitting in a high school science class right now, we'd be telling everyone, you're just your genes and your environment. So if somebody's unhappy now, it's what they were born with and what's going on in their world. But what we're realizing as we did this research is if we got you to do a 2-minute positive habit in your life, we could trump not only your genes, but 8 decades of practicing the negative. Some of those simple habits were as simple as for 45 seconds a day while you brush your teeth, you think of 3 new things you were grateful for that had occurred over the past 24 hours. So 3 new things you're grateful for each day. They have to be new and they have to be specific. I can't say I'm grateful for my son Leo. That actually doesn't work. I have to say I'm grateful for my son. He gave me a hug this morning, which means I'm loved regardless. 45 seconds to do this. Turns out we can watch what happens to the brain, and the parts of your brain that scan for the positive get stronger, and it means the rest of the day, your brain not only scans for the negative, it also scans for the things that cause you to feel meaning and gratitude in your life. And we could get people who are low-level pessimists to turn into low-level optimists in just a 3-week period of time, and the pattern continues for more than 6 months. And you can do this with 4-year-old children around a dinner table who seem predisposed genetically towards pessimism. Mm-hmm. You can trump that pessimism within a 21-day period, and the same thing with 84-year-old men. So it turns out it's not the gratitude that's really the most important thing about this, because everyone listening to this, they've heard all the incredible authors and speakers you've had on already. They know already how powerful gratitude is. The part we're adding into this is we would have never guessed that a 2-minute positive habit could literally trump your genes and 8 decades of experience. And that's what we find over and over again. 2 minutes of journaling about a positive experience can actually get people to not only relive that positive experience, but it turns out if you do it for 21 days in a row, your brain connects the dots, and it's the fastest intervention we found for raising the amount of meaning and engagement people feel in their lives. And we did it with the National MS Society. And people with even chronic neuromuscular diseases, if they journal about a positive experience, they can drop their pain medication by 50% just 6 weeks later. So we're finding incredible changes. 15 minutes of exercise a day is the equivalent of taking an antidepressant. 2 minutes of meditation a day at Google, we found raised accuracy rates by 10% and raised people's levels of happiness and lowered their stress levels. And the most powerful one we did, and the last one is at Facebook, I had them for 21 days in a row. Their first job was to write a 2-minute positive email each day praising or thanking one person that they know. Turns out 21 days later, if we test your social connection score, the breadth, depth, and meaning in your social relationships, your score is off the chart. And the reason why that's important is social connection is not only the greatest predictor of long-term happiness we have, but we just found out that social connection is as predictive of how long you will end up living as obesity, high blood pressure, or smoking. We fight so hard against the negative, and we forget to tell people how powerful 2 minutes of changing their mind could change their life.
I mean, this information, it's life-changing. And Shawn, you keep using the number 21. What's magical about that number?
We stole that from Alcoholics Anonymous, actually. Mm-hmm. That they found that if you could get somebody to kind of get into the groove of doing a habit for 21 days in a row, it seems like it would stick. It got past a barrier for those people, and that's what we want. We want people to not only do these habits for 21 days, but some of these habits, I went through 2 years of depression right as I was getting into this research while I was at Harvard, and these habits were ones that pulled me out, and now that I'm out of depression, these are things I still do every day. Like, these are things we want people to practice. We want them to do them as much as they brush their teeth. Like, this should be a daily activity. Because not only does it improve our health, but it improves every single business and educational outcome and our happiness levels as well. So the 21 days is we're trying to get 21 days into someone just so that they'll get started and keep that pattern.
Shawn, you hear these numbers. We have 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day. 85% are negative. 90% are the same thoughts from the day before. And all of this equals then the same emotions and the same behavior, same actions. So using this information that you've provided, is that what we can use to change this cycle and make a difference?
It absolutely does. So not only does it create disruption in the way that we were thinking about the past, it gets us out of those cycles of continually ruminating on those negative thoughts. What it allows it for is what we call an inflection point. It's a point where you suddenly get to deviate from what the life you were living yesterday or the day 6 months ago. And I think we've kind of given up in our society. We feel like we can't really change because not only our thoughts seem to be so similar, but we're told you can't change. This is because of you have genes for depression, or you've got genes for obesity, or, that it's the environment. There's no way you could feel happy if you're, at an impoverished school in Africa. But then when we started doing the research, we found that there are incredibly happy and positive people who came out of either had genes for pessimism, like in identical twins, or we found them, in the midst of every single, political instability and economic instability in the world, we found people were able to change. So absolutely, that's not only did we find that you can change, but that you create a new pattern so that you actually default to optimism instead of defaulting back to negative. And the reason for that is the brain becomes whatever it practices. And if we practice the negative, we just keep becoming that. So the part of our brain that scans the world for the positive has literally atrophied over time. Like our brain is just not as good at it because we don't use that skill set to consciously scan the world for the things we're grateful for. But as we start practicing it, it gets stronger. Those neural pathways actually get stronger. And it turns out we can take somebody who's been practicing pessimism, they were stuck in that rut for 8 decades, and we can actually make them default to an optimistic category throughout the entire day.
Shawn, in your TED Talk, you say that job success is not predicted by IQ, but rather by optimism levels, social support, and the ability to view stress as a challenge. So why aren't we teaching this to our kids?
Oh, I know. I wish we were. I have a little 1-year-old, and as we're looking at their educational patterns, we know that only 25% of your job successes in the future will be predicted based upon how smart you are or your technical skills, which is how we hire, educate, and train. 75% of our long-term successes are based on things that we just assume the kids are going to pick up, like how to build deep social connection or how to perceive stress as a challenge instead of as a threat, or how to be grateful. Turns out those things with optimism, social connection, the way we view stress, predict 75% of our long-term job success. And those are things we can teach in the classroom. Those are things we can teach, creating 2-minute positive habits in schools as well as in our companies. But we've also been finding that we can change the way that people think about the stresses that they feel in their life. I just did a large study with the president of Yale and Peter Salovey and Stanford professor Alia Crum, and we went into a bank in the middle of the banking crisis and looked at how they viewed stress. And we saw that if somebody views stress as something bad for them, it turns out that the negative effects of stress actually rise. But if you can train that person, and it only took us an hour to do it, but to train people to view stress as enhancing, that there's meaning involved with stress, and if you reconnect to it, it turns out we could drop the negative effects of stress by 23% within just a 3-week period of time. So what we're finding is if you just give us an hour with kids, we can actually help them go through those stressful time periods of being an adolescent or applying for college by helping them not to see those as threats to their happiness, but that is the challenge that allows them to achieve their potential.
Shawn, you and Oprah are offering a happiness program now. Tell us about this online course.
It's been an incredible experience because she has been such a lifelong learner. And as she heard this research, and as she heard about how I had experienced not only how happiness leads to success, but that we can actually create happiness out of depression, which she went through. I went through depression, that she said, we need to get this out to people. So we created a 21-day course that simulates what we were doing at Harvard, but tries to get it into an easy format. So for 21 days, you get a 5 to 10-minute video lecture describing this research and how you can use it over the course of the day. And then over the 21 days, you practice 3 of these 5 habits that we've been studying. And by the end of it, you can track yourself on these assessments. You can see how the levels of happiness rise. You can go deeply into the research. And what it's been incredible for is it gets people to go from just hearing this idea and being like, oh yeah, happiness is a choice, to actually moving from information to transformation, using it, putting these habits into practice with their families or with I'm meeting parents who are buying this course for their kids that are off at college. We teach foreign languages and we teach calculus, but we forget to teach people how to create these positive habits that predict 75% of their successes. So this 21-day course that Oprah created with us is the best thing I've seen for getting people. It fills that gap.
And if you'd like to get information about this course or about Shawn or any of his work, you can visit happinessadvantage.com. Shawn, thank you so much for joining us today and for helping us take the first step to a happier life. I'm hoping that many of our listeners will choose to be happy and then multiply it by spreading positivity and optimism. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for letting me share the research.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.